Lieutenant Daniel Hart stood in the shuttle window, staring at the alien capital as it grew larger beneath him. The world of Zaloria did not look anything like Earth. From orbit he could see tall silver structures rising like blades from the ground, glowing with soft blue energy. Rivers flowed between the buildings, shining like light instead of water. Daniel felt excitement and fear mixing inside him. Humanity had waited for a moment like this for centuries. They were no longer alone in the galaxy, and now they were about to speak on equal ground with another great civilization. Daniel was part of the first official diplomatic mission to the Zalorian Empire. 3 human ambassadors, 1 cultural advisor, and him the translator. He was the youngest member of the group by a full decade. Many believed he was chosen only because the alien language had proved too complex for older linguists who still struggled to adapt. Daniel had learned faster, using a flexible mind and long nights of practice with alien recordings. Still, the weight on his shoulders felt heavy. If he made a mistake, he would not just embarrass himself. He could embarrass Earth. The shuttle landed on a landing platform that extended out from one of the larger towers. The doors opened with a gentle sound, and Daniel followed the others down the ramp. Alien guards stood waiting in rows, dressed in metallic armor that pulsed with light. Their faces were calm but unreadable, like statues that could come alive at any moment. Daniel tried to keep his steps steady. He reminded himself that these were allies, or hopefully would be. Their guide appeared at the front of the platform. Daniel recognized the high collar and golden crest that marked a court official. The alien bowed in a formal greeting and spoke in calm, melodic tones. Daniel listened, catching the meaning from the rhythm of the language. He translated for the others, doing his best to keep every word accurate. "Welcome, humans of Earth. The Imperial Court awaits your presence. May this meeting open a new chapter." Daniel spoke the words in simple English, but his voice shook slightly. The ambassadors nodded and thanked the official. No one pointed out that Daniel was showing nerves. They all felt the pressure. The walk through the palace was overwhelming. The halls were enormous, filled with murals made from moving light. Scenes of ancient Zalorian history danced and flowed across the walls. Battles fought with energy spears, peaceful councils under crystal chambers, and starships launching into the void. Daniel tried not to stare too long, but he could not help it. 1,000 years of history glowed in every direction. The Zalorians had achieved space travel, while humans were still learning to build cities on Earth. He heard whispers among the guards as they walked. Their language was fast, but he understood enough to know they were discussing humans as if they were strange guests from a forgotten corner of space. Some were curious. Some were doubtful. A few were amused. Daniel kept translating quietly for the ambassadors, but in his heart he felt like a student walking into a school full of geniuses. Humanity had grown powerful in the past century, but compared to the Zalorians, they were still newcomers. Then they entered the grand chamber. The ceiling rose so high that Daniel could barely see its top. A soft glow filled the room, bright but gentle, like dawn light on a cloud. Senators and nobles lined the sides of the hall, speaking in low tones. Their clothes displayed different colors and patterns that showed house rank, position, and achievements. Daniel's mind raced to remember the cultural rules he had studied late at night. One wrong gesture could insult someone important. One wrong word could change the entire tone of the meeting. At the end of the chamber sat the imperial court throne, and beside it stood Princess Selvara. Daniel had seen images before, but seeing her in person was something entirely different. Selvara was tall and graceful, with iridescent skin that shimmered like pearl. Her eyes were sharp, watchful, intelligent. She held herself like a leader who had already carried heavy responsibilities despite her young age. Rumors said she was not only a princess but also a strategic commander and one of the sharpest minds in the Empire. Daniel swallowed. Of all the aliens in the room, she intimidated him the most. The ambassadors stepped forward, and Daniel translated their introduction. His voice was louder than before, steadier, but his chest still felt tight. Selvara listened, without showing much expression. When Daniel spoke the final sentence of the greeting, she turned her gaze directly to him. She spoke in her own language, clearly and slowly, but there was challenge in her tone. "So this is the human who claims fluency in our tongue." Daniel translated her words for the others, keeping his voice neutral. Then he responded politely in the alien language. "I claim nothing, Your Highness. I am only here to learn and serve." A ripple of quiet surprise moved through the court. Daniel realized quickly that they expected arrogance from humans. His simple and humble answer had caught their attention. Selvara's lips curved slightly, not exactly a smile, but not disapproval either. The conversation continued. The ambassadors spoke of peace, trade, cultural exchange, and future military cooperation. Daniel translated every sentence with care. Sometimes he had to pause to think of the correct shape of a word, or the right, respectful form. Sweat formed behind his collar, but he kept going. The princess questioned Earth's history, its values, and its long-term goals. Daniel responded with honesty. Humanity did not want conquest. They wanted to learn, to explore, to grow, and to stand as equals among the stars. The court listened. Some looked surprised. Others whispered to one another. The princess continued to watch Daniel, as if studying him. The meeting lasted over an hour. By the end, Daniel was emotionally drained. His brain felt hot from the effort of translation. When the ambassadors finally requested rest, the princess nodded and gave permission. A guard escorted the humans to their temporary living quarters inside the palace. When Daniel finally reached his room, he sank onto the bed. It was soft and warm, designed to adjust to the sleeper's body. For a moment, he just lay there, staring at the glowing ceiling. He wondered if he had done well or if he had made some mistake he had not noticed. Maybe he had used the wrong respectful form. Maybe his accent had sounded strange. Maybe the princess had caught something he missed. But there was no more strength left in him. Exhaustion from the long flight, the surreal palace, the high pressure, and the constant mental work finally won. Daniel closed his eyes, planning to rest for only a minute. He fell asleep instantly, and he had no idea that his day was not over yet. Daniel woke with a start the next morning, unsure for a moment where he was. The bed was too soft, the air too clean, and the walls glowed with a gentle blue light that reminded him he was far from Earth. He sat up, stretched, and took a deep breath. Today was a new day, and he needed to perform even better than yesterday. Humans had made a decent first impression, but respect in the Zalorian Empire was not given easily. It had to be earned, again and again. He quickly washed and dressed in his formal diplomatic uniform. The cloth was sleek, dark, and trimmed with silver. It had been specially designed to be comfortable in different temperatures, since no one knew what the alien palace environment would feel like. Daniel wondered what the Zalorians thought of it. Their clothing looked like art come to life, flowing fabrics mixed with energy designs that changed color with movement. Compared to them, humans looked plain, but maybe that worked in their favor. Simplicity showed focus, he hoped. Breakfast was served in a wide hall with floating dishes that slowly rotated in the air. Daniel had seen zero-gravity plating in science videos before, but seeing it in person made him stare a few seconds. The food looked unfamiliar, smooth spheres of glowing fruit, strips of a textured plant that smelled faintly of mint, and a warm drink that changed color as it cooled. The ambassadors ate slowly, and Daniel tasted each item with caution. Surprisingly, everything was mild and pleasant. He wondered if the palace chefs had purposely toned down flavor to avoid shocking humans too early. His meal was interrupted by a message that appeared as a soft light projection above the table. It read, "You are requested in the Hall of Knowledge within the hour. The Imperial Court will continue discussions. Good fortune. Daniel recognized the phrasing. It was respectful and formal. He drank the last of his shifting tea and prepared himself mentally. The Hall of Knowledge was quieter and smaller than the grand chamber from the previous day. Tall crystal pillars surrounded a large circular table. Each pillar displayed moving text and diagrams, likely live reports or historical references. Zalorians did not waste time on meaningless ceremony. They valued efficiency. Everything served a purpose. Daniel entered beside the ambassadors. But today, he noticed something different. More eyes were watching him than yesterday. Some faces looked curious. Others, thoughtful. Word had spread quickly. The young human translator had not embarrassed himself. Some considered that surprising. Others considered it worthy of attention. Princess Selvara stood at the far end of the hall, speaking quietly with a group of advisors. Her posture was relaxed but commanding. When she turned and noticed the humans entering, she offered a small nod. Her gaze settled on Daniel for a moment longer than on the others. She did not smile exactly, but Daniel thought he saw a flicker of interest. The meeting began soon after. Topics shifted from cultural introduction to more serious discussions. Shared space lanes, trade treaties, military limits, and the possibility of joint scientific projects. Daniel translated non-stop, his tongue moving carefully around alien grammar and respectful forms. He could feel the complexity of the language pressing on his mind, but he refused to let fatigue show. He knew the court watched not only what he said, but how he said it. Selvara questioned Earth's stability as a rising power. She pointed out that humanity had grown rapidly in a short time, and rapid growth sometimes created chaos. Daniel translated her words faithfully, even though they cut sharply. The ambassadors responded with calm politeness, explaining humanity's systems of self-correction and cooperation. Selvara listened. Expression unreadable. Then she spoke directly to Daniel again. "Translator Hart," she said, "you learned our language in 2 years. Most species take 5, some 10. How did you accomplish this?" Everyone turned toward him. Daniel's mind worked quickly. He needed to answer well, but also honestly. He replied in her language, "Humans are adaptable. We learn fast when we must. And I studied because I did not want misunderstanding to become a wall between our peoples." Soft murmurs rippled through the hall. Selvara considered his answer, then asked, "And what do you think of the Zalorian Empire now that you have seen it with your own eyes?" Daniel inhaled slowly. "Every answer here mattered," he said. "It is older, wiser, and more advanced than anything Earth has known. But greatness comes not only from age, it comes from what a people still hope to build. I think the Empire is looking for new growth, not only past glory, and I believe humanity wants to grow with it." For a moment, there was silence. Daniel wondered if he had gone too far. Perhaps he sounded too bold. But then, he heard a small sound from the princess. Not a laugh, but a slight exhale of approval. The Xalorian court respected courage when it came from sincerity, not arrogance. The meeting continued for another hour. Slowly, the sharpness of questions softened. Where earlier the court seemed to probe for weakness, now they probed for understanding. Daniel kept his focus, answered what he could, and admitted when he needed clarification. Strange as it felt, honesty seemed to earn more respect in this place than perfect answers. When the discussions paused for a midday break, Selvara approached Daniel directly. The ambassadors stepped back, politely giving space. Daniel stood straight, unsure what was coming. "You speak our language with unusual precision," she said quietly. "No, Your Highness," Daniel replied. "Only recordings and written data." Selvara raised a brow. "Interesting. Most species require native guidance to understand our emotional tones. Daniel felt heat rise in his face. She tilted her head slightly. And yet, you corrected Ambassador Kiran twice in translation today. One of the nobles noticed, though he stayed silent. Daniel's eyes widened. He had corrected the ambassador only because a slight mistake in phrasing would have sounded like aggression in alien ears. He hadn't expected anyone but him to notice. I only wish to avoid misunderstanding, he said. Selvara's expression softened a fraction. Daniel realized that she was not simply testing his knowledge. She was testing his loyalty to his duty, to accuracy, to the mission. You work hard, she said. Most who stand in this hall are trained from youth to carry the burden of diplomacy. You carry it well for someone new to the stars. Daniel did not know how to respond. Compliments from royalty were not common, especially not on the second day of negotiations. He bowed slightly, careful not to overdo it. Excessive humility could be disrespectful in Zalorian culture. Selvara stepped closer, lowering her voice so only he could hear. Many in the court wonder if humans belong here. I cannot decide yet. But you have given them something to think about. Her eyes held his for a moment, before she turned and rejoined her advisors. Daniel released a slow breath he did not know he had been holding. He was exhausted again. But this exhaustion felt different. Yesterday, he had been afraid of failing. Today, he felt the weight of possibility. The Empire was watching him closely. If he continued to perform well, his words could shape the first true bond between two great civilizations. As he returned to the ambassadors, one of them whispered, "She likes you." Daniel nearly stumbled. "No," he said quickly. "She is just analyzing me like a scientific sample." "Maybe," the ambassador replied with a small grin. "But you are holding your own. Keep going." Daniel nodded, though his heart was pounding. He had not expected personal attention from the princess. He only wanted to do his job well. Now, it seemed, the Empire's eyes were fixed on him, and the more they learned, the more the story of humanity in the stars began to change. Night arrived on the Xalorian capital in a way Daniel had never seen before. The sky outside his window darkened slowly, but the city below glowed with rising pillars of blue and silver light. The buildings themselves seemed alive, shifting patterns across their surfaces like slow-flowing energy. The Earth Embassy staff had returned to their rooms after another long day of intense diplomatic work. Everyone was tired. But Daniel was beyond tired. His mind felt heavy from constant translation, and even though he wanted to review his notes, his body demanded rest. He sat on the edge of his bed, rubbing his temples. He remembered every sharp question the court had asked, every measured answer he had spoken, and every moment Princess Selvara's eyes had rested on him. He still could not understand why she focused on him personally. She must have spoken to hundreds of alien diplomats in her life. Why should one human translator catch her attention? But thinking only made him more exhausted. He lay down, the bed shifting slightly to support his body in perfect comfort. Within minutes, he slipped into a deep sleep. He did not know that his room was not entirely private. By Zalorian royal tradition, members of the imperial family sometimes performed personal inspections of important guests. It was not meant as surveillance, but as a quiet way to understand the character of individuals. While humans might have seen it as invasive, the Xalorians believed that leaders should see their allies without political masks. And so, sometime after Daniel fell asleep, Princess Selvara walked silently down the hallway outside the guest chambers. 2 guards followed at a respectful distance. The princess approached Daniel's door, lifted her hand, and touched a small crystal set into the wall. The door slid open without sound. Daniel was unaware of everything. Selvara stepped inside and looked at him. He slept on his back, one arm over his chest, his breathing deep and steady. Even in sleep, he looked as if he carried responsibility in his shoulders. She had seen soldiers rest like that, people who never fully relaxed, even when unconscious. She had reviewed reports earlier that night. Daniel Hart's file was brief. Born on Earth. Exceptional language aptitude. Volunteered for diplomatic service. Little battlefield or political experience. At first, she had expected him to be uncertain and clumsy, but instead, he had shown precision and sincerity. The court had taken notice, and so had she. Humans were new to the galactic stage. Many believed they lacked the cultural depth of older civilizations. Yet this one young translator had shown a calm sincerity that many senior diplomats failed to display. She moved closer, keeping her steps quiet to avoid waking him. She wanted to see how he rested. Zalorian tradition believed that true personality was revealed in sleep. Then she heard him speak. At first, the words were soft and unclear. Daniel murmured something and moved slightly on the bed. Selvara narrowed her eyes, curious but still respectful. She listened carefully. He spoke again, louder this time, and the guards exchanged glances. The words were not random. He was sleep-talking, in her language. Selvara. She carries too much alone. And the rise. Well, the princess blinked in genuine surprise. Most humans had trouble speaking her language while awake. Speaking it clearly in sleep was unheard of. Daniel continued, unaware of his audience. They all expect her to be perfect. But she is just one person. Selvara felt something shift inside her. She was used to hearing praise, criticism, and political assumptions. But this was different. The young human was not thinking of her as a ruler, but as a person. Someone carrying a burden. Someone everyone expected to be flawless. He continued in a soft voice, almost like a whisper. She is strong. But strength gets lonely. The room went silent. Selvara's expression changed slowly, not anger, not shock, but something warmer and surprising. She gave a small, quiet chuckle. Not a mocking laugh, but one of recognition. A laugh of someone who suddenly realized a stranger had understood a truth even her own advisors rarely saw. One of the guards looked at her questioningly. Selvara lifted her hand slightly, signaling them to remain silent. Daniel mumbled something else, too faint to hear, and then fell still again. Sleep settled on him fully. Selvara studied him for another long moment. She felt something she had not expected that night. Respect tinged with curiosity. This human saw more than he should have. He had watched her only for 2 days, yet he had spoken in his dreams of pressures she had never voiced aloud. How could someone analyze her so deeply and yet remain so humble in front of her? She turned and silently walked toward the door. Before leaving, she glanced back one last time. She did not see a nervous translator or a young diplomat. She saw someone who carried empathy so naturally it escaped even in unconscious speech. The door slid shut behind her. The guards followed her down the hallway. One finally spoke in low, formal tones. Your Highness, shall we report what he said? Selvara shook her head. No. It was not meant for the court. It was unguarded truth. And how do you judge him? She walked in silence for several steps before answering. He is inexperienced, but not shallow. He understands more than most who stand in that hall. I wonder. She paused and then said softly, how far humanity will go with minds like his. The guards exchanged glances but did not reply. Meanwhile, Daniel continued sleeping, completely unaware that he had spoken to a princess in the most unfiltered way possible. He dreamed of the council hall, of translations, of the princess standing alone beneath a huge throne room ceiling. He dreamt that he reached out to tell her she didn't need to bear every decision alone, but the dream dissolved into peaceful rest before anything more happened. Morning came. Daniel woke feeling surprisingly refreshed, though he could not explain why. He stretched, sat up, and rubbed his eyes. The room lights brightened slowly, simulating a soft sunrise. He stood and prepared for the day, unaware that his life had quietly changed overnight. When he stepped into the hallway, he felt something different. The guards who escorted him showed a slight shift in posture, more respectful, more observant, almost as if something about him carried new weight. Daniel assumed he was imagining it. He certainly did not know Princess Selvara had visited his room. He did not know that she had heard his tired heart speak truths his waking mind would never dare say. He only knew that today, once again, he must do his best. As he walked toward the meeting chamber, Selvara stood waiting at the far end of the hall. She looked directly at him. Just for a moment, Daniel thought he saw softness. Tiny, brief, but real in her eyes. She inclined her head. Daniel's eyebrows lifted. He bowed slightly in return, confused but respectful. Selvara began walking ahead, her voice quiet and calm, but carrying words that hinted something had changed. "Translator Hart," she said, "I have some questions for you today." Daniel nodded, unaware that this time the questions were not only political, they were personal, and the true alliance between two worlds was about to begin. Daniel followed Princess Selvara into a small but elegant chamber connected to the main council hall. The room was circular, with curved walls that shimmered like moonlit water. The light was calm and soft, and there was no council, no guards, no advisors, only the two of them. Daniel felt his stomach tighten. Meetings like this were rare, and usually very serious. He wondered what he had done. Did he say something wrong yesterday? Did his translations offend someone? The silence made him nervous. Selvara turned to him, studying his face with a calm yet unreadable expression. For a moment she said nothing, and Daniel felt his throat go dry. Then she spoke slowly, her tone controlled but strangely gentle. "I visited your room last night." Every thought in Daniel's head froze. His heart nearly stopped. He stared at her, unable to form a single word. She continued, "It is a traditional practice. We watch guests who carry influence, not for spying, but understanding." A pardon. Daniel swallowed hard. He wanted to speak, but Selvara was not finished. "And I heard you speaking in your sleep." His face turned pale. He did not need to hear the rest to understand the danger. He had spoken an alien language while dreaming. What had he said? What if he insulted her? What if he broke some cultural rule? He felt his legs weaken. He forced himself to remain standing straight. If I said something inappropriate, I deeply apologize," Daniel said, in a trembling voice. Selvara's eyes softened slightly. "Calm yourself, translator. I am not upset." Daniel blinked. He had expected anger, not calmness. She continued, her voice quieter now. "You spoke of me, not as a princess, but as a person." Daniel felt heat rise into his face. He wanted to disappear. He looked down, unable to meet her eyes. She stepped closer, not threateningly, but with the attitude of someone who wanted honesty, not fear. "You spoke of responsibility," she said, "of burdens, of expectations others place upon me." Daniel finally forced himself to speak, though his voice was faint. "I must have been exhausted. I didn't mean to." "No." She cut him off softly, not harshly. "Do not apologize for the truth." Slowly, Daniel lifted his head. For the first time, Selvara did not look like a perfect and untouchable leader. She looked tired, calm, but tired in a way that only someone under constant pressure could understand. She walked toward a curved seating alcove and gestured for Daniel to sit. He hesitated, then joined her, keeping respectful distance. She folded her hands over her lap. "Do you know what it means to be a royal in this empire?" she asked quietly. Daniel shook his head. He had studied Zalorian culture. But textbooks could never explain something like this fully. Selvara answered for him. It means you do not belong to yourself. You belong to the court, to the empire, to history. Every word I speak is judged. Every decision I make is weighed against centuries of tradition. Daniel listened silently. She went on. Zalorians respect strength above all. A leader must not show doubt. A leader must not show weakness. And peace is often seen as something difficult to defend. Daniel finally spoke. And yet, you seek peace. Her eyes flickered with a mixture of irony and hope. I seek balance. Our empire has been powerful for a long time. Many believe continued military dominance is the only path forward. I believe growth comes from new connections, even ones with young, unpredictable species like yours. She paused, then added quietly, but not everyone agrees with me. Some want humanity to prove itself through force, not diplomacy. Daniel thought about the council members who had looked at humans with suspicion. Some of them probably believed humanity was too new, too small, too inexperienced to stand among ancient powers. Selvara continued, I am expected to maintain the image of total confidence. But your sleeping words reminded me that sometimes others can see what even close advisors cannot. Daniel was stunned. He had never imagined she would speak to him like this, not with the voice of a princess, but of someone who carried a mountain of expectations. He took a slow breath. His voice was small but sincere. You are respected because you carry that weight. But sometimes, the greatest strength is not standing alone. It is allowing others to stand with you. Selvara looked at him for several seconds, her expression unreadable. Then, something changed in her eyes, an emotion Daniel could not fully name. Respect, perhaps. Appreciation. Maybe even relief. You speak as if you have led nations, she said softly. Daniel nearly laughed aloud. I'm just a translator from Earth. I only try to understand. Quote, Many speak loudly, she replied. Few understand. The room fell quiet. Daniel sensed that this moment was more important than anything that had happened in the grand council rooms. This was where trust could be built. Or broken. Selvara leaned back slightly and sighed the first unguarded sigh he had heard from her. The Empire watches you, Daniel Hart. Not just for your words yesterday, but for what you represent. You are the first human to stand in full court and not falter. Daniel shook his head. I was terrified. Courage is not lack of fear, she replied. Courage is acting despite it. And the court noticed. She looked straight into his eyes and continued. Yesterday, 2 senators changed their stance on cooperation with Earth after watching you. Not because of the ambassadors or arguments, but because you showed earnest respect. Daniel felt his breath catch in his chest. He had believed himself only a supporting figure, someone carrying words from one side to another. He never imagined the outcome of the negotiations could hinge on him personally. Selvara continued speaking, her voice taking on a thoughtful tone. In diplomacy, strategy matters. Technology matters. Power matters. But sincerity. She touched her chest lightly. Sincerity reaches farther than all of those. Daniel sat quietly, letting her words sink in. Then, unexpectedly, Selvara stood and walked toward a shelf built into the wall. She picked up a small silver device, flat, smooth, and decorated with a symbol Daniel did not recognize. She returned and placed it gently in his hands. Daniel looked down at it in confusion. What is this? A personal royal token, she said. It holds my mark. It grants you certain recognition in court. Most diplomats receive one only after years of service. I give it to you now. Daniel stared at the device in shock. This was not just a gift. This was political trust. He looked up at her, eyes wide. Why? I haven't proven enough yet. Selvara tilted her head. You proved something many do not understand. that humanity's strength is not only in its machines or ambitions, but in its heart. End quote. Daniel felt something tighten in his chest. Gratitude, weight, responsibility. He wasn't sure. He bowed his head slightly. I will not disappoint you. Selvara's voice was quiet but firm. See that you don't, because now, more eyes than ever are watching. A soft chime echoed from the outer hall, signaling that the council session was about to begin. Selvara stepped toward the door, then paused and looked back at him with a faint smile. Small, controlled, but real. And Daniel, she added lightly, in the future, try not to reveal royal secrets in your sleep. Daniel's face flushed crimson. I didn't know. I talked in my sleep. I noticed, she said, with a soft, almost amused tone. She left the room with royal grace. Daniel stood alone for a moment, staring at the token in his hand. He had come to Zaloria, thinking he was merely a translator. Now he realized he was already becoming a symbol of humanity's potential, of a new alliance, and of a connection that neither he nor the princess had expected. He took a deep breath, straightened his uniform, and followed her into the grand hall. The future of two worlds was waiting. The grand council chamber was already filling when Daniel stepped inside. Nobles, senators, high-ranking commanders, and scholars took their places along the curved seating platforms. Their shining robes and armor caught reflections of the glowing walls, turning the entire hall into a sea of shifting color. Daniel tried to calm his breathing. Today felt different. The room felt heavier, as if the future of two civilizations was balanced on a thin line. Princess Selvara entered moments later, her presence guiding the room into silence without a word. Every noble straightened. Every voice fell quiet. Daniel watched her walk to the center dais with calm confidence. After their private conversation earlier, he now understood the burden she carried. She was not simply a princess. She was the shield and the direction of the empire. Daniel stood behind the Earth ambassadors, ready to translate. His hands were steady, but his heart beat fast. Selvara began the session with a ceremonial greeting, her voice clear, strong, and formal. Honored Council, today we continue discussion on Earth's petition for formal alliance. Daniel translated for the Earth delegation, each word precise. The senators responded quickly. Some were cautious, some doubtful, a few openly resistant. One older senator stood, his armor designed with long, sharp edges like a battle crest. Humans have been in space for a short time, he declared. How do we know they will not become a threat once they gain full galactic access? Daniel translated the challenge word for word. The ambassadors offered a calm reply, speaking of peaceful intentions, mutual trade, and cooperation. Daniel translated again, but he sensed the senator was not fully convinced. Selvara watched the exchange, her expression steady. She then gestured toward Daniel directly. Translator Hart, she said, you have been present in every discussion. In your view, what does humanity bring to the Empire? Daniel froze for a moment. No translator is ever expected to speak their own thoughts during diplomacy. Translators carry voices, not opinions. But Selvara was giving him the floor. And now, every noble in the chamber was watching him. He stepped forward slowly. His legs felt heavy. He swallowed once, then spoke in the alien language, so that no one needed translation. Humans come from a small planet, he began. A planet that was not always peaceful. But over time, we learned how to rebuild after hardship. We learned how to unite when survival demanded it. He looked around the room. Some nobles leaned forward. Others listened with arms crossed. That is why humans value cooperation, because we know that progress is impossible without connection. He paused, then continued more firmly. The Empire has ancient strength from knowledge, from tradition, from years of perfection. Humanity brings something different. We bring the ability to adapt quickly, to learn fast, to open our minds to new ways. He gestured to the chamber around him. We do not ask to stand above you, only beside you. There was silence. No murmurs, no whispering. The nobles listened more intently now. Daniel finished with a final truth. Great power is not only measured by the length of history, it is measured by the courage to walk into the future without fear. He stepped back, heart pounding. He did not look at Selvara immediately. He instead waited like a soldier, awaiting judgment. The elder senator rose again, voice sharp. Bold words for a young species. But how can we be sure humanity's ambition will not grow out of control? Daniel did not answer. This was the ambassador's role now. But before they could speak, Selvara raised a hand sharply. She looked at the senator with steady eyes. Ambition without wisdom is dangerous, she said. But so is fear without reason. The senator stiffened. Selvara continued, her voice carrying through the chamber. I have listened to the human delegation. I have watched their translator speak and respond under pressure. I have tested his sincerity, his loyalty, and his understanding. And I have made my decision. Daniel felt his chest tighten. Everyone in the room leaned forward. The entire hall fell into complete stillness. Selvara spoke clearly. I submit a motion for full alliance between the Xalorian Empire and the planet Earth. The words struck the room like a shockwave. Some nobles gasped. Others whispered in surprise or disapproval. A few nodded thoughtfully. Such a proposal from the princess carried great weight. One noble stood. Princess, are you certain? This would raise Earth from new arrival to recognized power. It has never been done so quickly. On subside 7. With you extate, Princess not of game. Selvara answered without hesitation. Earth has proven itself not through armies or fleets, but through intent. Daniel felt dozens of eyes shift toward him. His face warmed with embarrassment, but he kept still. A vote was called. Across the chamber, nobles activated small devices at their seats. Tiny holographic symbols flared in the air above each station, red for rejection, green for support, blue for conditional support. Daniel watched with held breath as the colors appeared. The count began. Dozens of choices blinked across the hall, forming a shifting constellation of light. Finally, the chamber chime sounded. A projection appeared in the air, revealing the result. Green outnumbered red. Earth had the vote. The court murmured loudly now, not with mockery, but with the realization that history had just shifted before their eyes. Selvara pressed her hand to the center of the dais, confirming the decision. With this vote, she announced, Earth is recognized as an allied world under equal standing with the Empire. Trade agreements will be established immediately. Scientific cooperation will begin within the cycle. Daniel's breath escaped in a slow rush. The ambassadors exchanged relieved smiles. Selvara stepped off the dais and approached Daniel. Her posture was regal, but her voice was soft enough that only he could hear. You said last night that strength is not only standing alone, she whispered. You were right. Daniel did not know what to say. His throat tightened. She continued. I have led this empire in battle. I have negotiated with species from the far edges of space. But rarely has someone reminded me that leadership is not a burden to hide, but one to share. Daniel swallowed hard. Princess, I am not finished, she said gently. He blinked. From today forward, you are not simply a translator. You have been granted status as a diplomatic liaison between Earth and the Empire. Your voice will matter in the council. Daniel stared at her in shock. He had arrived barely believing he belonged in the palace at all. Now he had a position few aliens ever achieved. He bowed slightly. I will serve with all I have. Selvara nodded once. See that you do. Around them, Nobles began offering formal greetings to the Earth delegation. Daniel realized he had to stand among them now, not behind his ambassadors, but beside them. Silvara stepped back, her expression composed but eyes bright with something almost warm. "And Daniel," she added very softly, with the smallest hint of humor. "Next time, if you must speak in your sleep, at least warn me first." Daniel's ears turned pink. He coughed into his fist. "I will try." Silvara gave a quiet chuckle and returned to her advisors. Daniel watched her go, knowing that she was no longer just a distant royal figure. She was a leader he respected, and in her own way. The rest of the chamber buzzed with activity, but Daniel stood silently for a moment, letting everything sink in. He had come as a simple translator. Now he stood as a bridge between two worlds. Humanity had not earned its place through force, power, or intimidation. It had earned it through honesty, understanding, and the courage to speak from the heart. And across the galaxy, the story of humans new to the stars but burning with potential had only just begun.